welcome to another day in the Milky Way. And that's my dog. I could talk on here all day, but as soon as I announce it, God, welcome to. Anyway, thank you with my co-host David Null, Hawkeye Two Feathers. Thank you for being here tonight.
Greetings and blessings, as always, my dear friends, and to all you humans and all you four-leggeds out there. Mine's asleep over there on the floor, but he'll be up and around. But we greet you. We greet you with the love and the honor of the infinite creator, and we're always thankful that you show up on our Tuesdays. This is 137 times we've done this. I mean, every time I do it, I go, what? And we put one more notch in the bag kind of thing. You know, one more marble in our, I done lost my marbles so many times. So we've been looking for them. So this is 137 tries.
Oh, yeah, 130. That's amazing. But hey, one of these days we'll be doing our 200th show. Eventually.
It's not far from 150.
I know.
I mean, that's 137 is dang good, but we're what 13 off from 150, so that'll be the rest of this year. We'll be at 150 shows at least by the end of this year. So, thank you all for showing up. For those of you who have, and thank you for participating.
Yeah, great stories. And you notice this week I've been putting out a lot of those shorts. I've been working a lot, but hey, I said I was going to get back on the bandwagon one of these days, and I've been putting out some of your shorts there of your telling the stories. So pretty much every night you can get on the Milky Way and check out a story. You didn't even have to watch the whole show. Just listen to the story once a night. So anyway, tonight we're going to continue off where we left off last time with Sullivan's expedition, John Sullivan and his expedition. But before we get all that going, I want everybody to say, look, I got a Milky Way Soul Tribe shirt with my smiling face on it, and get them, and they come in a nice little bag like this. See, with my upside down. There you go. You get yours today. All you got to do is go over to Nina the Mystic's merch channel, link in the description below. It's about $20, and you too can wear me on your chest. Anyway, support the show. Go buy a shirt. They're for a limited time only. So,
collector's item.
Yeah. So it's going to be a collector's item, and who knows when it will come back. But it was nice of Nina to make up a shirt and get it on there for me. I don't have the time to do all that stuff, and Nina's got a little extra time, and there she is. She says, greetings everyone. Thank you, Nina, for making up these shirts. And
thank you, Nina.
Yeah, I hope everybody got $20. Get on there, order yourself a shirt. It's really easy, take you about 2 minutes. Support the show. If you got $20 laying around, get on there, get it done before she takes them down. I'm hoping she puts up a hoodie one of these days, and I'll order one of those too. But I got my mug the other day too. So shoot, it's in the cupboard over there. I'll grab it.
Pre-order now before Christmas.
Yeah, no, I got, and she even got mugs. So link is in the description. I got a mug with my smiling face on. I ordered 2, I think it was. And so somebody is going to get a mug with my smiling face for Christmas. I love it.
I would not curse anyone with my smiling face. I figure being on the internet is enough. If you want my smiling face, take a screenshot.
Yeah.
I'm not being rude. I'm just being honest.
Oh, yeah. Off the Hook says, here is this. There we go. Oh, wait a minute. It's hard. Oh, there you go. Hawkeye looking good. Jesus.
Well, thank you.
There you go.
I think I'm going to let my beard grow till my birthday. I've usually cut it by now. So I know somebody's like, wow, this beard's getting long. And it is. And I'm like, dang, I usually cut it by now. But I think this time around, just because, I've only got a month and a half basically for my birthday, I think I'm just going to let it grow.
Yep.
And then take a couple pictures and cut it. Like, here I is on my birthday. Get out the bush hog.
Yeah, I've just never been a beard grower. Sorry, girls, not a beard grower. Some people love beards, but not me. I'm just not a beard grower. So anyway, just get your shirts today while they still have them, and we'll you can be a supporter of the Milky Way Soul Tribe. There you go. But you got to go on Nina's merch channel and get it there, because I don't have a merch channel.
And you too can have Robert on your chest.
Yeah. Woo! Be on some lucky girl's chest somewhere, won't I? This when your birthday is? 9/24?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll have to remember that. Write that down somewhere.
Yeah, every year it's about the same time.
Yep. So I bet you it is. I bet you it's the same time every year. But anyway, we're going to get back to talking about this. I got a lot of stuff to go through. And then you got some good stories coming up and pulling some cards later tonight. Babushka. Yes, I get it.
Yepers.
Okay. Well, anyway, let me find my stuff where we're going to go tonight. And we're going to take a trip back into yesteryear. And now last week we talked about Sullivan's War or expedition, which was commissioned by by George Washington himself.
Did he just freeze? Hello. George Washington. Well.
Oh, am I back?
Yeah, you're back now.
Okay. Well, anyway, yeah, the weather with the geomagnetic whatever's going on, just be wary that there might be a few freeze ups tonight. I know the internet's been acting wonky, so jump right in. Anyway,
I was fixing to.
Yeah, General John Sullivan. That was this guy. There you go. He was commissioned by George Washington to go out there, and we'll just do this. George Washington himself to go out there and destroy the Indians, burn their villages, kill off as many as you can, destroy their crops, their supplies, do a scorched earth on them. That's what he was told to do. And I got it here somewhere. And there, I found it.
And listen to other stories and things on other channels and histories. It's amazing. People are like, man, I just can't believe how cruel we were back in the day. It is like, oh yeah, now they haven't listened to our channel, but they're listening to the history of the, American Indian and, and this, and it's like, what, and so there's a lot of people who I can't necessarily say they're waking up, because it's not necessarily that they were asleep. It's just that part of history just isn't explained much like we go into detail.
Yeah. So this is the area we're kind of talking about, right up in here, northern Pennsylvania and New York area. This is where the Iroquois and the Seneca were, up in that area. And at the time, Connecticut over here was actually claiming these lands. It claimed some of New York, and it claimed some of Pennsylvania. So this land here was kind of in, is it your territory or is it mine? I'm not sending my troops out there to, fight the Indians when it's Connecticut's land. Well, New York's like, I'm not sending them troops out there if it's Pennsylvania's land. So it was kind of a no man's lawless land, but this Wyoming Valley area was really good with crops. You could grow corn there. You could grow fruit trees there. It was like one of these only places where you could like grow any type of fruit or tree bearing anything, and the soil was fertile. The climate was perfect, and the Indians knew it because they were growing all their stuff there. That was their, valley of choice. But
it's really close. As I'm looking, it's really close to Jersey too.
Yes, this whole area. So all these states were claiming this section of land. Well, the Indians had enough, and they decided, enough is enough. And we're going to retaliate back. And this is the story of Wyoming. And this is what spurred the whole expedition of...
now, this is Wyoming, Pennsylvania?
Wyoming, Pennsylvania, yes.
Okay, because, at first glance, or when you're listening, you go, well, wait a minute, they're still in Pennsylvania. They're not out west, but no. It's in Pennsylvania, so yeah, I had to tell that to my brain myself.
Yes. So,
you're going to give us a locale there, brother?
Yes, I sure am. If I can find a little drawing thing, usually there's a little padding with the pencil. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, you can see Wyoming. Here's the county of Wyoming, right here, Wyoming. So this is the Susquehanna Valley, right in Sullivan. We've been talking about Bradford, Tioga. This is the spot right there. And if I could just, where's the thing with the little pencil? I want to circle it. Maybe I can resize it if I resize it anymore. But, nope. Yeah, because there's usually a little pencil. Oh well. And it's right here. This little section right here, if you can see it. Maybe I'll just blow it up. And go like this. And there we go, right here. And once you get in there, but this river, the Susquehanna River runs through there. This is a branching. And as when you settle towns and stuff, you have to be on a river. This is where people, and then there's a lot of branches of rivers that go through here. So this little valley was very important. And you could water your crops, you could travel. Remember, these were the highways of yesteryear. This would have been a big interstate because you could take a bigger boat on it because it's a bigger river. These littler ones you probably take canoes on, but this one here you can take a big boat, which means you can move your stuff you're selling down river to wherever you're going, or up river, or whichever place. You get on another river. You know what I'm saying? It's very important to have those things.
Yeah, because even today, the barge traffic is very important. There's some rivers in Alabama. It may be the Alabama River, but the Arkansas River, the Mississippi River, and so the Ohio River. There's still a lot of barge traffic on those rivers, even to this day. So, but yeah, so it's still important.
Yes. So anyway, on July 3rd, 1778, which was about a year before, the Battle of Wyoming is also known as Wyoming Massacre. It was a military engagement during the American Revolutionary War between the Patriot militia and the force of the Loyalist soldiers and indigenous warriors. Now, the loyalists were British, for the British, and the patriots were the Americans settling the land. And that's why the natives didn't like them, because you're taking our land and planting crops and cutting the trees down. Whereas the loyalists, the British, you're like, keep the land. All we want is the hides. It was all about a money thing, You're growing corn, and you're giving us corn, and you're giving us hides, and doing all these things, and trade is good. It was all about trade.
And
Okay.
but here's the thing. The British were a little bit more subtle about the land grab.
Yes,
because the British already owned it. That's why they were fighting.
Yep.
And the Indians just didn't know that. I don't think they comprehended. Wait a minute, we're fighting with the guys that own us. Wait a minute.
Exactly. But those guys didn't want to come in and kick you off your land neither. So there you go. The battle took place in Wyoming Valley of Pennsylvania on July 3rd, 1778, in what is now Luzerne County. I think I'm saying that, Luzerne County. Result was of an overwhelming defeat for the Americans. The battle is often referred to as the Wyoming Massacre because of the roughly 300 Patriot casualties, many of whom were killed by the Seneca and the Cayuga as they fled the battlefield or after they had been taken prisoner. Widespread looting and burning of buildings occurred throughout the Wyoming Valley subsequent to the battle, but non-combatants were not harmed. Most of the inhabitants fled across the Pocono Mountains to Stroudsburg and Easton, or down the Susquehanna River to Sunbury. Within a week, a widely distributed but highly inaccurate newspaper report claimed that hundreds of women and children had been massacred. This false version of the events was accepted as proven fact by many writers for decades afterwards, but has been thoroughly discredited. So, see, they had their own propaganda back then, people. You think, oh, fake news, CNN. No, anything to sell papers. Hundreds of men and women, children massacred at the Wyoming, massacre. It was terrible. The natives were going nuts and killing them all. But if you read the thing here correctly, it means unless you were a combatant, they didn't want to kill you off.
But also, you see, they wanted to sway public opinion because the white people got all upset. Oh, them savages. So just like, the left are doing to the Republicans now, we're all savages if we think differently than they do. So anyway.
Yeah. So
there have been folks, I say oligarchs or whoever behind things. Sometimes it's presidents or whoever. Sometimes, most of the times, it's really rich people. And they force an opinion upon people. And they go, well, we think this is the way it ought to go. And people go, well, yeah, well, then next thing you know, it's being done or it's going to be done or it's over.
That's right. Okay. So in 1777, this is the background. I don't know if we want to read all this. The British recruited loyalists and indigenous allies to conduct a frontier war along the northern and western borders of the 13 colonies. Remember, they were fighting, the war in independence. British Indian Department officer John Butler was granted permission to enlist loyalists in a regiment that can be known as Butler's Rangers, with Seneca chiefs Susquehanna corn planter encouraged Seneca and Cayuga warriors to participate in raids against frontier settlements. Similarly, Mohawk war leader Joseph Brant, remember we talked about him last week. He was quite the leader. Joseph Brant encouraged Mohawk participation and recruited loyalist volunteers to fight with him. By April 1778, the Seneca were raiding settlements along the Allegheny and the west branch of the Susquehanna River. In late May, Joseph Brant raided the Cobleskill in Triton County, New York. But anyway, so it goes on from there. So what it was is the Indians were riled up. The British were fueling the fire and giving them guns and stuff, and they were using the natives to fight on another front, and it's just less troops that they had to put out, and now they're fighting on the western side of the colonies, driving the colonists back in. Remember, at this time they had blockaded, they had ships, the British had ships, and they were on the coast and marching their troops down into the Delaware. You know what I mean? So okay, we did that one. Okay, so Wyoming Massacre, July 3rd. During the this is during 360 American settlers in the Wyoming Valley of Pennsylvania, part of the stepped-up British campaign of the frontier attacks in the West. In early June, Colonel John Butler led a force of 1,000 Loyalists and Iroquois allies against the 5,000 inhabitants of the valley. Mostly American women and children gathered at Forty Fort. About 300 men and boys left the protection of the fort to meet the attackers. Well, that was one-sided, 1,000 against 300. In the massacre that followed, 360 men, women, and children lost their lives, and many others who escaped to the forest died of starvation or exposure. Butler's forces then moved northward to continue the raids along the frontier settlements of New York, eventually leading to a more aggressive American action against the Iroquois. So by doing this, that encouraged George Washington to send out Sullivan. Okay, so what happened there? Well, George Washington to Major General John Sullivan. So this is about 8-9 months later. He says, I got to do something. He calls up John Sullivan and says, and here's what he told him: the expedition you are appointed to command is to be directed against the hostile tribes of the 6 nations of Indians with their associates and adherents. The immediate object are the total destruction. Now, this is George Washington, the guy we think is this, can do no wrong kind of guy, but he is ruthless. The immediate objects are to total destruction and devastation of their settlements, and the capture of as many prisoners of every age and sex as possible. It will be essential to ruin their crops now in the ground and prevent their planting furthermore. The troops to be employed under your command are Clinton's, Maxwell's, Poor's, and Hand's Bridges, and 10 independent companies raised in the state of Pennsylvania. In Hand's brigade, I comprehend all the detached corps of Continental troops now on the Susquehanna and Spencer's regiment. Cortland's I consider as belonging to Clinton's brigade. Eden's may go to Poor's, and Butler's and the Rifle Corps to Maxwell's or Hand's, according to the comparative strength and circumstances. Clinton's brigade, you are informed, has been ordered to rendezvous with Conohoche, subject to your orders either to inform or to form a junction with the main body of on Susquehanna by the way of Osage, or to proceed up the Mohawk River and to cooperate on the best manner circumstances will permit as you judge more advisable. As soon as your preparations are insufficient forward, you will assemble your main body at Wyoming and proceed hence to Tioga, taking from that place the most direct and practical route into the heart of the Indian settlements. You will establish such intermediate posts as you think necessary for the security of your communication and convoys. Nor need I caution you, will you leave a sufficiency of men for their defense to take care or to diminish your operating force as little as possible. A post at Tioga will be particularly necessary, either a stockade fort or an entrenched camp. If the latter, a blockhouse should be erected in the interior. So that, what is it telling them? It says keep your groups together. Don't stop. Don't lag behind. Don't say, oh, protect somebody. Leave everybody, burn the crops, keep going, and keep going. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I not, we'll just skip some of this and get down here. I need not urge the necessity of using every method in your power to gain intelligence of the enemy's strength, motions, and designs, nor need I suggest the extraordinary degree of vigilance and caution which will be necessary to guard against surprises from the adversary, so secret, desultory, or rapid as the Indians. If a detachment operates on the Mohawk River, the commanding officer should be instructed to be very watchful that no troops come from Oswego and Niagara to Oswego without his knowledge, and for the purpose he should keep trusty spies at those three places to advise him instantly of the movement of any party and its force. This detachment should also endeavor to keep up a constant intercourse with the main body. Wow, quite the lengthy letter here. But he goes, after you have thoroughly completed the destruction of their settlements, if the Indians should show a disposition for peace, I would have you to encourage it, on the condition that they will give some decisive evidence of their sincerity by delivering up some of their principal instigators of past hostility into your hands. Butler, Brant, the most mischievous of the Tories that have joined them, or any other they may have in their power that are interested to get into ours. There's no way that Butler or Brant are Butler. We just showed. I just showed you. He was the general there of the British Army, and Brant is like the general of the Indian Army. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Those are like the two biggest guys. They are not going to be given up by the rest of the Indians. They'd be like the British winning and then saying, okay, we're not going to kill you all unless you give up George Washington. Not happening.
Or like back in the day after the Civil War, they chased Jefferson Davis all the way down here into South Georgia. And after they captured him, they wanted to hang him. And everybody was like, no, he wasn't a traitor to the United States, because the southern states had seceded legally.
Yeah.
And so, the same thing with Robert E. Lee. They wanted to shoot him, put him in prison. They took all of his properties, and and they wanted to, arrest them all for treason. And it was like, no, we seceded. We were the southern states. But anyway.
Yeah, exactly. It's like going to war, and then when you get done, it's like, hey, I mean, I was in the country and I had to go to war. What more can you ask from me? I don't know if I believe in the cause, but I have to go. I was drafted, But now that I got all done, now you're going to put me in prison? I was just doing what I was told.
Back in the day, when it came over the radios, there were people who were like, "What? The war is over?" So, and you could hear on the other side, So there were some places where the Japanese didn't get the message till way later. But on both sides with the Germans and everything, everybody was hallelujah, it's over with,
Yeah.
And everybody knew it. And so one minute they were the enemy and the next minute they were not. So.
Well, yeah, exactly. Okay, so where were we? Sorry.
Let me mention something while you're looking for your place. So in this, though, they didn't necessarily want to forget about what the Indian did. Then, in fact, in what you just read, Washington was like, hey, if they want to, uh, 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 parlay for a treaty, it's okay, but they're going to have to give us something. In other words, they're going to have to turn in some of their own guys.
Yep. Yeah.
They're going to have to give up some of their chiefs. So somebody's going to have to sacrifice themselves within the group in order to have peace. So it's like, who were the guys that were in charge? Who were your captains? It's like, well, he was, and he was. I was just a brave on horseback. So him and him and him, and so but to that point, the Native Americans don't want to give up their own.
Yeah, no, of course they're not, and they're not like that. I see Amber Dawn's in the house, and Elderberry, welcome. Thank you for stopping in. Anyway, okay, back to where we were. Yeah, they're not gonna. Let's find out what happens. This is what Washington. This is even before they went. He's saying if they want peace after you burn all their houses and their crops and everything like that, if they hand over the two big guys. Yeah, we'll talk peace. Yeah. Okay. They may possibly be engaged by addressing secrecy and stratagem to surprise the garrison of Niagara and the shipping on the lakes and put them into our possession. This may be demanded as a condition of our friendship and would be the most important point gained. If they can render a service of this kind, you may stipulate to assist them in their distress with supplies of provisions and other articles of which they will stand in need. Having regard in the expectations you give them to our real abilities to perform. I have no power to present to authorize you to conclude a treaty of peace with them, but you may agree upon the terms of one, letting them know that it must be finally ratified by Congress and giving them every proper assurance that it will. I shall write to Congress on the subject and endeavor to obtain more ample and definitive authority. So basically, I can promise you a treaty, but it's just nothingness. But you will not be by any means listen to any overture of peace before the total ruin before the total ruin of their settlements is affected. It is likely enough their fears, if they are unable to oppose us, will compel them to offer a peace or policy, may lead them to endeavor to amuse us in this way again. Time and concur for more effectual opposition. Our future security will be in their inability to injure us the distance to which they are driven and into terror, with which the severity of the chastisement they receive will inspire them. So basically, if they're down and out, they got no food and no clothes, no houses, and that will inspire them for peace. Peace without this would be facetious and temporary. New presence and addition of force from the enemy would engage them to break it. The first fair opportunity and all the expense of our extensive preparations would be lost. When we have effectually chastised them, we may then listen to peace and endeavor to draw further advantages from their fears. Yep, fear. That's it. But even in this case, great caution will be necessary to guard against the snares which their treachery may hold out. They must be explicit in their promises, give substantial pledges for their performance, and execute their engagements with decision and dispatch. Hostages are the only kind of security to be depended on. Should Niagara fall into your hands in the manner I have mentioned, you will do everything in your power for preserving and maintaining it by establishing a chain of posts in such manner as shall appear to you the most safe and most effectual and tending as little to reduce our general force as possible. However, We shall be able to decide as the future events of the campaign unfold themselves. I shall be more explicit on the subject hereafter. You will have completed the objects of your expedition unless otherwise directed. In the meantime, you will return to form a junction with the main army in the most convenient, expeditious, and secure route according to circumstances. The Mohawk River, if it can be done without too great a risk, will perhaps be the most eligible on several accounts. Much should depend on the relative position of the main army at the time. As it is possible to foresee what may be the exigencies of the service in this quarter, this united with the other important reasons make it essential that your operations should be rapid and the expedition should be performed in as little time as it will be consistent with its success and efficiency. And here I cannot forbear repeating my former caution that your troops may move as light and as little encumbered as possible, even from the first onset. The state of our magazines depend on it as well as other considerations. And he goes on about transporting troops and such and such. Relying perfectly upon your judgment, produce an activity, I have the highest expectations of success equal to our wishes. And I beg to assure you that I anticipate with great pleasure the honor which I will respond to you and the advantage to the common cause from a happy termination of this important enterprise. Given a headquarters, Middlebrook, 31st of May, 1779. George Washington. And that's what George Washington said. Basically, go out there. You're going to take 4,500 troops. You're going to go out there and you are going to burn their houses. You're going to take prisoners. You are going to kill and burn and destroy them till they can't function anymore.
You're going to murderize them.
Yeah, and then when they can't do anything anymore, then they'll beg for peace. And once they beg for peace, they will give up their highest ranking generals, and we will have them too. And then you're going to take control of, just basically because they're starving and they don't have anything. There's Regine Hutchinson. Thank you for coming tonight. Mary Wins is in the house. Savage Lee is in the house. Thank you. Okay, so anyway, that's what George Washington did. All in this area. Like I said, this area here, this is quite the area.
Show us where Niagara is, if you don't mind, because it should be up there on the lake, right?
Yeah, here is the area. Should be somewhere in here. Maybe it's up past there. It's as far as the map.
I mean, it might be in New York.
Yeah, I can't get it.
But my point to that is, so he didn't want to just go in that one small area. He wanted him to go all the way to the lake.
Yes, that was the idea.
He didn't want him to just, not just in a valley between a couple of mountains. No, this was, all the way to the lake.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
to hold Niagara at all costs, because it was shipping lane and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, because once you get out to the lake, like I said, highways and rivers are highways. And, the bigger river, the interstate.
Well, but a lot of folks don't know that, there's a lot of things that go up through the Great Lakes and out, up the St. Lawrence Seaway and out into the Atlantic Ocean. So way back when, they found that area so that they would bring things inland. So you didn't know if something's going in to through the Great Lakes, if you're along the Atlantic seaboard, you don't know what's going on. You know what I mean?
That's right. That is right.
So that's one of the things the British had going for them, because they were working on mostly Canada.
They were. And of course, after the Wyoming massacre, they've been celebrating this as the 150th year, the anniversary of the Wyoming massacre, July 3rd. Now you could probably get they it was like they still remember it, back in the day. Maybe this is a better map. I got some of these maps. I was trying to find the best one, but it's pretty hard to find. But this is all Indian land. At the time, this is wild. This is the Wild West. Here's Albany. I'm trying to find nothing. I don't know. I'm trying to Shawnee old. That's not a good map. Let's try another one. This is where men, women, and children are all fighting because the Indians are, they're out there and everybody else ran to the fort. If you were out there alone, well, and this picture here is kind of good because it's like Wyoming Massacre. Here you are marching, and the Indians, you can see their heads just sticking out in the grass, waiting for you to get into the right spot. And here's the British flag over there, And that's how these people fought. They just went out, men, boys, anybody. You throw a gun on them, and these don't look like soldiers. You're out there thinking you're gonna, win. Nah, not happening.
Or that you're basically minding your own business, and in comes this, 4,500 troops. Then you're like, what's going on?
Yeah, exactly.
And all of a sudden somebody shoots at you. Then what? Well, now it's on, And since, they were told to, do a scorched earth thing, it's hard to imagine that George Washington would do that. And then something dawned on me a few minutes ago. He was a 33rd degree Mason.
Yeah, well, all them guys were.
I know, but I mean, in the grand scheme of wiping people out and changes, doing a whole eugenics thing of, getting rid of whole populations and things, wow, he was a Mason after all.
Yeah. I mean, we think of him as such a virtuous man, but really he knew what he was doing, man. I tell you. Let's see if I got anything. Oh, there's a monument there for it. Okay, that's the Battle of Wyoming, but we were talking about this. Yeah, so once they marched, you got to Seneca County and around September. In September, this is when the corn is getting ready to harvest. You know what I mean? Let's see. On the way, General Sullivan met with a group of Oneida Indians, an openly pro-American tribe with the Iroquois Confederation. These Oneidas asked that Sullivan spare their Cayuga brothers. Mindful of the warning from Washington, Sullivan refused this request. Sullivan told the Oneidas that the Cayugas had participated in frontier attacks and that any attempt now at friendship was too late. The Cayugas would now not be spared. After taking a day to recuperate, the Sullivan army continued to march along the shore of the Seneca Lakes towards the town of Canenda. In the route, the Sullivan army destroyed several small houses, and in one small village, the soldiers found that the Indians had just left their kettles on the fire boiling of corn and beans, which the soldiers then ate. Canenda was taken without a fight on September 5th. At Canenda, the soldiers found a white captive who reported there was a force of nearly 1,000 Indian warriors at Canetsada, at the head of the Seneca Lake. When they actually crossed the outlet to Seneca Lake and approached the Canetsada, however, they found the village pretty empty. And it goes on about that because the Indians were fleeing. The Indian population from the estimated 1775 total of 9,000 to only 4,000 by 1794. Sullivan's expedition not only served as a military purpose, but brought an end to Indian inhabitation of the Finger Lakes area, opening the way after the war for white homesteading and settlements of the area. Now the British forces would have to get their supplies from some other source than the Iroquois tribes. That's right. The Iroquois were supplying with the food, and of course, that was a pretty good lucrative thing. Now we're gonna get to a picture.
And they worked together on it. You know what I mean? It was basically it seemed at the time, at least, that there was fair trade.
Yes.
Because they weren't warring amongst themselves with trade wise. So that merchants can always come up with some kind of parlay.
Yeah. Okay. Richard's in the house and Chloe's in the house. Thank you for being here. Okay, so now I got this book up, the Journal of the Officer. So I went through and I found a few ones that I'd like to read. Okay, so where are we? They crossed a river. This is the Journal of Charles Nukrick. I guess that's how you pronounce it. Okay, on the 29th, we camped in the morning about 10 o'clock. Our advance party fell in with the enemy near Newtown, about 5 miles from Chemung. After the skirmish with, I gotta get something else. I can see these. This really teeny tiny writing. The Schmuggers, their situation found that they had thrown up a breastwork and seemed determined to defend it to the last. Our artillery, consisting of 6 pairs, 3-pounders, and a cohorn, I don't know what a cohorn is, and was soon brought to bear. It terribly frightened them and from their works, but previous to General Clinton's and Poor's brigades fled off to the right, Hand's light troops on the left to gain the enemy's rear, where we lay a very high hill on which they had taken post, but they were very soon routed and drove from there, and the loss of 9 Indians killed and left on the ground. The wounded they carried off and have reason to suppose that they were considerable. Our losses of 3 killed and 34 wounded, among the latter Major Titcomb, Captain Clays, and the 2nd New Hampshire Regiment, and Lieutenant McCoy of the 1st, due to share dead, who is since dead of his wounds. And the action took 2 prisoners, a white man and a Negro. Their accounts nearly agree with the following manner: that Butler and Brant were brought there and had with them 600 Indians and 200 Tories, that they had been there for some time waiting for our arrival and subsisted upon corn only. The night encamped on the field in action. And that's a good one. But anyway, that's one. I got another one here. There's some good ones. Some are short, some are a little bit longer, but that was one of the longer ones. Here's one.
Imagine just subsisting on corn.
Yeah, waiting for the troops to come, and all you got to eat is corn. Those people were really dedicated, I tell you. Yeah, more than likely had zero concept of money. Yes, they probably did. But no, this here next one is probably the part where they didn't have money, but they had other stuff. Anyway, here I'll just cut into halfway. General Maxwell in the rear to the fore of the left. Colonel Reed with 2 regiments to cross the creek and march in front of the town. The town had been surprised at daybreak, but General Hand's guide, not only fully acquainted with the place, missed the road, and General Maxwell's brigade having difficulty files to pass. The army did not enter the town until sunrise, when they found it deserted by the inhabitants. But 2 or 3 Sargos skulling about it had left 200 or 300 deer and bear skins and several other things. General Hand pursued the Indians with the expectation of overtaking them. After marching 2 miles, he was fired upon by a party of Indians, about 40 in number, who had secreted themselves on a hill and killed 6 and wounded 9. And returned the fire and charged them with the bayonet. Wow. They must have been close quarters there. But then they fled so fast our troops could not overtake them, but wounded 2 or 3. Han then returned to the town, which was then in flames. After burning the town, 5 regiments were ordered to cross the creek to cut down their corn, which was effective, with the loss of only 1 man and 2 or 3 wounded. After cutting their corn, they returned to the town and then proceeded backwards towards Tioga and arrived in camp about 8 p.m. on the 13th. Saturday, August 14th, they lay still. And then August 15th, 3 p.m., a party of about 10 Indians were discovered on the west side of the Tioga branch. A party of men was sent from General Hand's brigade and 2 Jersey Regs, but was not able to overtake them. On August 16th, 1,000 men under the command of General Poor marched this day to meet and conduct General Clinton to this place. August 17th and 18th, I spent writing to my friends. And then it just goes on and on. But I ain't going to do that. But you can see where it's going here. It's like, we had a skirmish. We killed a few Indians. We burnt their town down. We burnt all their crops. We took their bears, 300 deer and bear skins. That's a lot of bear skins. I mean, that's a lot. To them, that's money, right?
That's a lot.
Yes.
But to think, 1,000 men traipsing through the wilderness back then.
That's still a lot of men.
Not a couple hundred or 50, but 1,000. That's.
Yes. Okay, here, I'm going to skip over to that. I'm going to skip to the 29th, or the 28th, Saturday, August 28th, march to Chemung, 3 miles. August 29th, march at 10 a.m. And at 11, the advance corps discovered the Indians in a brushwork. Then they engaged a few shots. The artillery was ordered up and to begin a fire upon there. Right while General Poor and Colonel Du Bois moved upon them, left in order to surprise them. But the military drove them before the whole could get round. That only detachment fell in with them. A smart firing ensued. Monday, August 30th. This morning was brought in 5 scalps by a scout. The army was employed the whole day in cutting corn. Okay, Tuesday, August 31st, marched at 8 a.m., 5 miles to the rough country in Newtown, burned it, and proceeded 5 miles farther and encamped in a flat country. And I'm like, holy cow. Yep, we marched and we burned all their corn. We marched when we burned their town. Oh, we cut them into. And when they talk about bringing the artillery out, that's the cannons they're talking about. Cannons.
Right.
Not just, the guns, the light artillery. Bringing the cannons, and those people just go crazy. It's like, I can't imagine what. Boom, boom, you're hiding up in some brush. Brush don't, you can't get around a cannon. Okay, I got this.
No, but what did it say that it took them all day to cut the corn?
Yeah, they spent days cutting corn and burning it.
But I mean, so that must have been a lot of popcorn. But I mean, think if it took that many men a couple of days to cut all the corn, that's a crap load of corn. Just saying. Put 50 guys out in the field with a big field of corn. And how long is it going to take them, to cut a 10-acre plot of corn with 50 guys, But I mean, if you got 1,000 guys and it takes them 2 days to cut the corn, that's a lot of corn.
Yeah, it says the morning was brought in 5 scalps by a scout. The army was employed the whole day in cutting corn. Wow.
Right.
Okay, so I'm just going to keep reading here because it gets good. Tuesday, August 31st, march at 8 a.m., 5 miles through rough country to Newtown. Burned it and proceeded 5 miles farther and camped in a flat country. Now, listen to this. Wednesday, September 1st, marched 3 miles, entered a swamp 9 miles wide. very muddy and thick. After getting through the swamp and crossing the creek 16 times, which by continued windings into Seneca Lake, arrived at Catherinestown, or Shamungo, the first town in the Seneca Nation, which Butler, with his Tories and the Indians, had left the day preceding our arrival. This information we had from a very old squaw who was left, and who, after she was informed that we would not kill her or manifest or molest her, the greatest degree of gratitude to us and her good angel. Well, of course, you're not killing me. You're not burning my house down. Okay, so they left the little old lady alive. Thursday, September 2nd, remained in camp. Friday, September 3rd, marched early, found the good soil. This is the important part. Marched early, found the good soil, and marched easy 11 miles. Saturday the 4th, marched at 10 a.m., 12 miles through a fertile country, and camped at 5 p.m. I guess that's a way to, that must have been, see, that's what I'm saying. That is some of the best country at the time, when you're marching and you can see that it's fertile soil. Obviously, it's cornfields and orchards and things like that. You know what I'm saying?
Well, not necessarily that, but if there are a lot of crevices and little creeks and little thises and ditches and stuff, it's going to be really hard to traverse that area, especially with cannons. And so, but if they only went 5 miles, to me that means that they was going through some fairly rough terrain, maybe up some hills, through some creeks, and maybe through some forested areas. Whereas if they went 11 miles, it was through maybe some open fields, and it was obviously easy to get through.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'm going to move over to this one.
So it's interesting how the story can tell you the terrain they were working through, and if you think about it just even slightly, you can understand what they were going through.
Exactly. Oh, here, Monday the 13th, marched at 3 a.m., 2 miles to I don't even know what that town is, and halted 4 hours whilst the bridge was erected over a small creek. At 12, the army moved in regular order over the bridge 3 miles and found an Indian and 6 of our men killed and scalped. Marched. How do you deal with that? Yeah, you're marching and 6 of our men are dead and killed and scalped. Oh, God. Half a mile farther and found where the enemy, amounting to about 200, had formed a ambush, but were gone and had left 73 packs and a number of guns. After marching 3.5 miles farther, arrived at Jacaraway here. And about 7 p.m., we were expected to find Mr. Sago, but as usual, had fled. We encamped at 8 with orders to parade at gun firing in the morning. The army, Tuesday, the 14th, the army marched at 12 after crossing a small creek, entered a large, extensive plain of about 15,000 acres, which lay on the Chiricera River. We crossed one end of the flat of the river, 3 miles, and entered a rough, woody country. 3 miles took us to Tunisia. On Wednesday, the September 15th, the army was employed in destroying corn, which was not less than 200 acres, intermixed with beans, and the best I ever saw. At 3 p.m., the army began its march to Tioga. At the same order in advance, with this alteration, the different columns marched by their right, but in advance by the left. They marched in their old tracks, recrossed the river into the creek running before the Chiramunga, here camped at 7 p.m. And on Thursday, September 16th, marched at 11 a.m. in our old tracks 4 miles and found 13 more of Boyd's party killed and scalped. 2 miles further brought us to Kanekasha, and where we camped the night. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, every little while, if you get away from the main group, them Indians are going to get you. But yeah, it's pretty.
Yeah, those were the forward scouts.
Yeah, or whatever they were doing. But hey, did you notice as they were going, they were building bridges, building bridges as they went, burning crops. And did you notice corn and beans, the best I ever saw? Yeah. And here, the General Sullivan's report, his report's in here too. Sir, I'm only going to read a little bit of this. So in mine of the 30th, His Excellency George, this is on September 30th, 1779. Sir, in mine of the 30th, to His Excellency George Washington, and by him transmitted to Congress, I gave an account of the victory obtained by this army over the enemy at Newtown on the 29th of August. I now do myself the honor to inform Congress of the progress of this army and the most material occurrences which have since taken place. The time taking up in destroying the corn in the neighborhood of Newtown, employing the army near 2 days, and there appearing a probability that the destruction of all the crops might take as much greater length of time than was first apprehended, and being likewise convinced by the accurate calculations that it could not be possible to effect the destruction of the Indian country with the provisions on hand, which was I had in store, and indeed all had pack horses to transport from Tigoa. It was in this situation I could think of but one thing to answer the purpose of the expedition, which was to prevail, if possible, on the soldiers to content themselves with a half-pound of flour and the same quality of fresh beef per day, rather than leave the important business unfinished. I therefore drew up an address to them, a copy of which I have honor to enclose to you, which being read was answered by the 3 cheers from the whole army. Not one dissenting voice was heard from either officer or soldier. I had them on hand from the best calculations I could make, 22 pounds of flour and 16 pounds of beef per man, the former liable to many deductions by rain, crossing rivers and defiles, and later much more so from the most unavoidable loss of cattle when suffered to range the woods at night for their support. I was, however, encouraged by the belief that I should be enabled to effect the destruction of and total ruin of the Indian territories by this truly noble resolution of the army, for which I know not whether the public stand more indebted by the persuasive arguments which the officers began to use, or the virtuous disposition of the soldiers were prudent in the cheerful compliance with the requisition anticipated by their wishes and rendered persuasion unnecessary.
That's a run-on sentence.
Yeah, it's a long. This is how these guys write this stuff. It's sometimes really hard to read. But anyway, it goes on and on. It's pages and pages of the stuff that he wrote. But
let me interject something here. If I'm interrupting, I know. But I'm thinking as I'm listening to that, do you think that those soldiers, if they was hungry, just burned that corn and those peas the best they've ever seen?
Yeah.
I mean, and you know that because the Indians also planted squash in with the beans and the corn. It was like a 3B, so, but, so I can see where, it took them longer than they thought because there was much more, field of corn. But I think in the explanation that he might have been trying to make is that, and he didn't say so out loud, but, we took us a long time because we gathered up some of that corn. We kept some of that corn.
I'm sure
we burned the fields, but after we shucked the corn. And what kind of flour?
Yeah, I don't know.
Wheat, well, but it could have been corn flour.
Yep.
And if
I'm
there
gonna,
was all that corn, then somewhere, some along the way, somebody was grinding some corn.
oh yeah,
So,
yeah,
and it could have been that, what took them so long is that they were grinding some corn, they were shucking some, they were, and then they were burning what was left over.
well, they had 4,500 men to feed. Sure, they
I
were.
know that's my point. So they did, where they got the meat, that's a good question. But, along the way, I'm sure there were with all those guns, they could, there were a bunch of hunters. But as far as the corn and stuff goes, they were cutting that corn and shucking it, and
Yep, yep. I'm going to go on with a little bit more of his report here. He took an
I'm
old
sorry.
Indian, he took an Indian lad and 3 women prisoners. One of the women being very old and the lad a cripple. He left them and brought on another 2 and joined the army on the evening of the 26th. Colonel Cortland was then detached with 300 men up the Tioga branch to search for settlements in that quarter, and in the space of 2 days destroyed several fields of corn and burnt several houses. Colonel Butler joined the army on the 28th, whereby a complete junction was formed at Kanawala. And on the 29th day after our leaving Newtown, here he was met by a plenty of we met by a plenty of provisions from the Tioga, which I had previously directed to be sent on. Colonel Butler destroyed in the Cayuga County 5 principal towns and a number of scattered houses, the whole making about 100 in number, exceedingly large and well built. He also destroyed 200 acres of excellent corn, with a number of orchards, on one of which had in it 1,500 fruit trees. Another Indian settlement was discovered near Newtown by a party consisting of 39 houses, which were also destroyed. The number of towns destroyed by our army amounted to about 40, besides the scattered houses. The quality of corn destroyed at a moderate computation must amount to about 160,000 bushels, with a vast quantity of vegetables of every kind. Every creek and river has been traced, and the whole country explored in search of Indian settlements. And I am well persuaded that except one town situated near the Allegheny, about 50 miles from Chinese, there is not a single town left in the country of the 5 nations. It is in pleasure I inform Congress that this army is not sufficiently has lost and suffered the loss of 40 men in action or otherwise since my taking of command. And then it just goes on for that. But anyway, 160,000 bushels of corn. That's not counting all the other vegetables of every kind, and 1,500 fruit trees. I mean, I guess we don't give the Indians credit that much because, I think, the Indians were out there and they just had some, they just walked around and said, oh, look, there's an apple tree. Let's go pick some apples. And, oh, look, we'll grow a little corn over here or there. But
we don't give them any credit at all. That's the whole thing. They were always referred to as savages. And even those savages had 1,500, fruit trees. And that was just in that one spot.
Yes. That was just in
that wasn't total that they went through and plundered and cut and burned and everything. That was just in that one spot. So, yeah. I'm curious as to how they determined 160,000 bushels. I mean, just curious how they figured that out.
I don't know.
But my point, I bet you those guys were like, we ain't burning all this. Hey, Captain, we're gonna keep some of this now, ain't we? They were like, nah, come on,
Well, I'm sure they kept enough to feed themselves, but in the big picture of things, it was all about, once we leave, there's going to be nothing left for them. That's what it is. Burn their houses, cut their trees down, burn their crops. We take what we want. And I read in there one place, remember, the Indians left so fast, they left the pots of food
Yep.
cooking on the fires, and then the troops went in there and just ate their food.
Right.
So they were
leaving in a hurry, ain't it?
Yeah. But like I said, they knew the troops were coming, and you didn't have a chance. They're going to kill you, take you prisoners, do something, and the Indians weren't having no part of it. So, like I said, this was quite the thing, and the Indians, are packing up like this and leaving as fast as they can. And remember how we were talking that the settlers, we were in many shows ago, we talked about how the settlers came in and said, wow, look at, we're going to grow crops here. And I says, yeah, well, they came in and there was already fields to grow the crops. Otherwise, they would have been spending all their time pulling out stumps, cutting down trees. You can't just go in a woods, cut down a few trees, pull out the stumps and grow. It doesn't work that way unless you got big machinery. So
but they did take teams of horses and dig the stumps out. So it depended on where they were. If you were up in the Appalachians, they were cutting trees and pulling stumps. But out there, if you was in a big meadow areas, I mean, there are big areas down here in Georgia that not everywhere is a forest. There are great big fields, and some of them are crops, and some of them are just fields, and and so back in the day, I'm sure there were like prairies and things and stuff like that in between the forest. So and
I get that, but that's the whole point. Is these Indians, they had already made 200 acres, of corn. You're talking 200. That's a lot. That's a big ass field, And I'm sure how much land would it take you to grow 160,000 bushels of corn?
And what if back in them days you're trying to wheel and deal, and you say, well, who said that they burned everything? Who said they ruined all the crops? Meaning that they left something for, hey, I got a buddy and his wife that want to move west. And, we burned all these things, but there's 200 acres of corn here. And we don't want to tear it all down because we got some friends of ours that would really like to occupy this space. Well, and if we get rid of the Indians, then they can move in.
Well, and that's what they did. They burned all the crops. They got rid of everything, took what they wanted. And then it says in the end, remember that that opened up the land for the white settlers to come in the next year, basically. So,
but my point is I don't think they totally destroyed it, because I think some of those 4,000 men said, I got kinfolk that want to move. Or I want to come back and live here. I'm going to leave a little patch of this 200 acres of some of this corn. Because I'd like to come back and farm this myself. I'm just saying, because there are a lot of entrepreneurs back there at any time, land grabbers, this and that. So I'm just saying, I bet you there were people who took advantage of the situation just like they do today. So they might not have destroyed everything.
See, but that I disagree. I disagree with that, because the fact there is no white men in this area. And if you left some corn, now it's at the end of the season, the corn is ready to be harvested. And if you were a white man and you went back into that area, the Indians are going to kill you. You need to wait till spring, and then the Indians are going to be starved off. They're going to be begging for food. Otherwise, if you left an acre of corn, the Indians would go in there the next day and harvest it. Because once the soldiers moved out, remember, he wasn't leaving anybody to protect any of these things. He was.
Yeah, but they were killing everybody along the way too, is my point.
Yeah, but the Indians
if there wasn't anybody there, I'm just saying, I bet you there was some folks that were just like, well, I don't know. Anyway, it's just a point of view.
I think they did destroy all the crops, because otherwise the Indians that were left would have came back and had some corn to eat. but they didn't have anything to eat. They burned the houses, they burned the corn, they took what they could carry for the troops, I'm sure they did, but they left the empty fields for the next year. These settlers are going to go in and say, look, there's this beautiful cornfield right here, 200 acres. You know how long it would take you to clear 200 acres to plant corn, or wheat or whatever you're going to grow? Holy cow,
Well, one of the things I'm wondering is, where did they get the seed? That's the reason why I'm saying they left a little behind. Where did they get the seed to replant that 200 acres?
I'm sure. Well, the Indians would have had remember, they had an enterprise of selling all that corn to the British.
Oh, I know, but I mean, one of the simplest things to have done would have been to hold some of that corn back for plantings, for a seed stock.
Well, and if they did or didn't, well, I'm thinking they didn't, because remember last week we were talking about how they found ears of corn that were 2 foot long, 24 inches long. Well, right. They got rid of that because we don't have 24-inch corn anymore. So that seed
must have been. It's been through several generations too.
I tell you what, if I was getting 24-inch cobs of corn, I'd be keeping that seed.
Man, don't you know?
Yeah, that one.
But anyway, my point about thinking about that was that 4,000 people, they got to be wanting to replant some of that, or they, all those seeds, because it takes it takes quite a few bushel to plant a large field of corn, so it's like, so where'd they get it to replant it? Just a thought.
And I think that's why they were at the mercy of the Patriots at the time, because if you got rid of their seed, you got rid of their corn, you got rid of their houses, come spring, the ones that are left are going to want to sign any treaty. They're going to want to live on a reservation, anything. Remember, even Washington said in his paper, don't give them any provisions unless they, hand over, those the Braddock and Brant. You hand over those guys, we'll give you a little food, but don't make any treaties. Yeah, they're really putting the screws to them, big time.
Oh yeah. And what I was thinking of is that all of the settlers who were pushing west, and so it's like, wait, we got some land over here. We just vacated the Indians. You can have it, and there's one of these farms got 200 acres of corn. Ooh wee, boy, there'd be a bunch of folks be moving out there. Yeah, the Amish moved into Pennsylvania in a lot of places, so think about that one.
Well, and you got to remember, too, it's the end of the season, so winter's coming right around the bend. But in the spring, I think come spring, people were going to be moving out there left because the Indians would have been gone.
That's my point.
Everything was going to be empty, and it was just open land. And then all those people that were in the Wyoming Valley before that got killed off, were terrified being there. They're going to come back. They're going to come back and start settling the valley again. So...
Well, one thing to just living in a farm community, anytime the corn combine goes through a field, there's always some corn on the ground along the edges. They never get all of the corn.
Yep.
So even though it's just kernels on the ground, if there was enough of it left over from the scrap, they could have gathered that to plant their 200 acres is where I'm headed with that.
Yeah.
Meaning the pioneers, not the Indians.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe, and who knows what the pioneers were planning there either. I didn't investigate into it that far, but maybe I should.
Yeah, pioneers would have wanted to plant corn because that's when it had been, prevalent in that area,
Yeah.
And any kind of beans or corn or anything like that, they would have continued planting those things. So,
yeah. Well, of course, the colonists didn't plant like the Indians do either. They weren't planting that kind of gardens either. They didn't plant beans and squash and corn together. They just planted corn, or you plant squash, or you plant, you know how it goes, and
Yep.
or wheat. Different kind of planting, different kind of methods. Kind of weird, but hey, I don't know. Anyway, we got a story.
Yeah.
I hope everybody enjoyed that little bit of history. Like I said, go out if you're interested in that. Go out and look up the Wyoming massacre. Look up Sullivan's expedition, John Sullivan and his expedition of 1779, and do some research on it. It is pretty cool. There's so much more that I could have told you about it, but it is really neat to find out really what actually happened. It's a good, interesting read.
How the white man wiped out the Indian once again.
Yes.
Another example. And, but, it seems like for every time we talk, at least I do, it may seem to folks like we're beating up the white people, but it's that it's misunderstood that, well, it was our right to have this property. There wasn't anybody here. We just moved in and took over. No. And so we as Americans, in a way, should remember our heritage. And our heritage is that, our ancestors, a lot of them were a bunch of warmongers and drove the native peoples off their land so that they could take it. That's a lot of ways, that's the truth. No, there are a lot of people who got over here after the fact, but those folks who want to claim that their heritage goes all the way back to the Mayflower, your ancestors are culpable. You know what I mean? But anyway, so but it is the true history, rather than we were just endowed by our creator to accept this land for nothing. So there were people already here. Well, tonight's story, we'll see how long it takes, but probably just this one. I've already pulled the cards, and boy, what a ooh-wee. So the story for tonight, number 12 in this series, and it's an Osojikwe story. Flint Man, The Search for Fire, and Loon Woman. At one time, people had no flint for their arrows. They used bark for arrow points, and it did not work well. One day, Ground Squirrel determined to get flint from Flint Man, who owned it. So he stole away while everyone else was out hunting. He got to the house where Flint Man lived and went in. He said he was hungry, and Flint Man gave him pounded flint to eat. He ate much of it and then lay down to sleep. The pounded flint he had eaten made Squirrel sick, and he defecated blood. Flint Man saw this and thought, well, he will die. He came over and looked at Squirrel and thought he was dead. So he left him and went out. As soon as he was gone, Squirrel jumped up, for he had been shamming. He took a lot of flints, made them up in a bundle, and ran away. Flint Man soon saw him and gave chase. He nearly caught up with him when Squirrel threw the flints into a hole in the ground and jumped in after them. Flint Man came up and jumped in after him, but Squirrel was out the other end and away before he could reach him. Flint Man gave chase again, but as before, Squirrel jumped into a hole and got away. Then Squirrel traveled far underground. But when he came up, Flint Man saw him and continued to chase. 5 times, Squirrel thus eluded his pursuer, and then the latter gave up and went back. Squirrel, however, kept on underground. When he got back to the house, he hid the flints in the bushes, all but one, a knife, which he tied to a string and hung round his neck so that it was on his back behind where no one could see it. He went in and sat down, but the others had not got back from the hunt. By and by they returned and brought meat. They gave some to Squirrel, who secretly cut it up with his knife. They saw this and asked what he was doing, but he wouldn't tell them. Next day he went out and took all the flints he had brought. He took them to the house and gave them to the people, giving one to each. With these, he said, you can kill deer better and can cut up the meat. Then all day the people sat there and chipped their flints, making arrow points. And next day they all went out to hunt, and with the new points they killed great quantities of deer, so many that there were 5 deer apiece when they divided up the lot. After this, one day Dog went to get fire, for people until then had eaten their food raw. He traveled far to the west to where Fire Woman lived, for she owned all the fire. He climbed up on the roof of her house and lay there quietly near the smoke hole. The sparks came out in crowds, and Dog held his ear over the opening and caught a spark in it, and so in the other ear as well. He had put a little dry tinder in his ears before starting. Then he ran home. The fire in Fire Woman's house began to die down, and she said then, "Let the fire dog carries go out." Then Blue Jay said, "Quass," and it began to rain. Dog held his head on one side to keep the rain out of his ear and ran as fast as he could. When he reached the top of the hill just west of Burney Valley, it stopped raining. He got back to the house about sunset as the people were eating supper. They gave him some, but he did not tell them what he had done. Next morning, Dog got up, went to the center of the sweat house, and held his ear down to the ground and took out the plug he had put in it. And the coals fell out. People could cook their food now, so they roasted some meat and said, "That tastes good." Then they went out hunting. Next night, Wildcat had a bad dream and went out to the little house nearby where the 2 sisters of all the people in the big house slept. These 2 women were Eagle and Loon. Wildcat crawled in and slept there, but did not touch the women. In the morning, Loon went out, got some pitch, and smeared it on herself so that she might know who it was who had come in the night. Next night, Wildcat went again to his sister's hut, and this time had connection with Loon. And in the morning, when he left, some of his fur was left sticking to the pitch. He came back to the house and lay down so that no one could see where the hair had been pulled off. He pretended to be asleep. Loon found who had come to her in the night and was angry. She went outdoors and said, "Bring me a bundle of bark to carry fire in." And at once the fire blazed up all around the sweat house. Every time she said this, a great flame shot up in front of the door. The people inside grew afraid at this, and Coyote said, Who has done this to our sister? Then he turned to Wildcat and said, you better go off with her or she will burn us all up. Wildcat did not want to move, but they rolled him over and saw where his fur had been pulled out. Then everybody said, you did it. Then Butterfly got up, removed Wildcat's membrane and put a small one in his place and sent Wildcat out, telling him to return as soon as possible. Loon was very anxious to make Wildcat her husband at once, and so made night comes on so quickly. They camped then, but in spite of his endeavors, Wildcat could not satisfy Loon. Early in the morning, while Loon was asleep, Wildcat got up, took a log of wood, laid it beside her, and ran away. As soon as Wildcat had left, Spider began to make a net and had finished it by the time Wildcat returned. Coyote got in first and then all the others, after which Spider drew them all up into the sky except Eagle, who flew away. Loon, by and by, waked up and discovering the cheat, ran back to the sweat house, sending fire ahead of her to burn everyone up. She saw all the people, her brothers, going up in the net and called out, why do you leave me? You had better take me back. Now Coyote, to whom she spoke, was her father, and he felt sorry for her and wanted to see her. So he made a tiny hole in the bottom of the net to peek through, and immediately it burst, and all fell down into the blazing house. Loon was watching, and all at once made a seed beater out of some twigs, and when pretty soon Coyote's heart popped in the fire and shot up into the air, she let it go, but caught the next one, and so on, catching all as she thought. She strung them on a string. One heart popped out that she missed. That was Woodworm's, and it fell far over towards Shasta. Another popped and was missed, and this was Butterfly, and it fell far to the east. Bluestone was also missed. Meanwhile, Eagle was not burned, for she was flying about, weeping. Up to this time, the world had been flat, but as Eagle went about, she made the mountains. Loon took all the hearts she had strung and put them about her neck as a necklace, and then went to one lake after another, till finally she came to one at the head of Butte Creek, and there she stayed. Meanwhile, Eagle went all over the world making mountains and looking for the hearts that had escaped. For a small hill she would throw up the earth once, but for a large mountain 3 times. By and by she reached the country toward the north. Here 2 women had gone out to get wood. They came to a deer lick, which was formed from the tears of one of the hearts that belonged to Woodworm. The 2 girls were bees, and they heard the sound of weeping, and at last found the heart. After much difficulty, they dug out the heart, which then became just like a person, and learned from him all about the way he had come to be there. Then Woodworm married the 2 bee girls. Eagle came along this way, wearing pitch in mourning for her brothers. And when she found her brother Woodworm here, she returned to to near the head of Butte Creek. Here lived two boys, some sort of small brown water birds, and she asked them if they had seen Loon. They said that sometimes they had seen her on the lake and had heard her cry. They said she had a necklace about her neck and that she looked at herself all the time in the water. Eagle asked them if they could kill Loon, and they said they thought they could if they had an arrow points of deer bone. One wanted bone from deer killed at the same time when their hair was turning red, the other when they dropped their antlers. So Eagle went off to get the bones. She brought them, and the two men then took their arrows and went out in a tool boat before dawn. They hid in the tool swamp near the edge of the lake. The younger said, "I'll shoot first." The elder then said, "No, I'll shoot first, for you might miss." They finally agreed that both should shoot at once. At dawn, Loon appeared and the two shot, and she dove immediately. They watched, and by Loon came up, dead. So they took her back to Eagle, who took off the string of hearts around Loon's neck. Then she skinned the loon and stuffed it, and said that loons must cry and laugh in springtime. Eagle then hunted all over the world till she found the other two hearts, those of Butterfly and of Bluestone, and then came back with them all to the sweat house which she had rebuilt. This was near Pittville. She then took pine boughs and fixed up the inside of the house nicely, and laid the hearts in the water in the river nearby. Then she went into the house and, lying face downwards, slept. In the early dawn, all the hearts came to life again, and all came trooping into the house. She lay quietly without looking until she had counted them all. Then she got up, and they all went on living as before. The end. Now that's an interesting set of stories. And I remember reading a story before where Doghead went and got fire, but how he got it in his ear was different, but he did get it in his ear and he did sneak back. That's different from how there's some stories further north on the West Coast, and I can't tell you which tribes, but that, that Possum went and got fire, and that's the reason why Possum doesn't have any hair on its tail. And so, and there are different stories about how fire was kept on an island, and the fire keepers wouldn't allow the regular folks to have it, and they were very stingy, and so the different animals connived in all kinds of different ways in order to get fire to the people. So, but anyway, this one would, put fire in both ears, and then it started raining, and he tilted his head to one side and, made it all the way back. That's just cool. Whether you believe that actually happened, it's a cool story. Did it happen that way? I don't know, but that's a cool story.
Yes, it is. Oh, yeah. Cool. I love the stories.
And also about the flint, too, about the flint maker. And I don't know if it was squirrel before, but I remember that one of the critters snuck into, to get Flint. And, Flint Man was not happy. So, but it's interesting that, and somewhere along the line, there were folks, they realized that they didn't have certain things. They realized that they didn't always have Flint.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Their stories said, well, how did we? So that meant that somewhere along the line, they learned how to do something better than just a stick, and how much it improved their life, just by going. I mean, even to this day, a good Flint arrowhead is sharp as the dickens. You can cut your finger easy on Flint. There are some, they say that, Flint in and of itself is sharper than, and is used in some surgical tools because it doesn't dull, and I'm like,
Yeah.
So,
hey,
but
there's Pajo. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. They had a reason for using the stone tools, and a lot of it's because you just pick it up off the ground, and once if it chips or something and it gets dull, you just flick it back a little bit, and you got it sharp again.
Yeah, and not all stone. You people that go, well, can't you use any kind of stone for an arrowhead? No. No. And living down here in the South, there is the Flint River, aptly known for the Flint in the river, but it goes all the way up to Atlanta. But I've talked with native folks, from out west, and they're like, man, there are some folks that get together, at least they did years ago, and the bunch of them would get together in a pickup truck and come east and go to the Flint River, and they had a certain place where they went, and they collected as much flint rock as possible and toted it back, because it's still, some of the best flint on the Flint River. I got some really big, big chunks of rock. And I used to have a friend of mine, two friends of mine actually, that knew how to nap it. And over the years, I couldn't see the cracks in it. They'd say, here, hit right here, and here, strike right here. And I'd go, at what? Well, that spot right there. And I'd look at them and go, I don't see it. Maybe if I handled it more, but I just felt stupid. Here, these folks are just chipping and napping away. And I'm like, I couldn't see it. When you get done with it, I'll put it on an arrow for you.
Yeah.
So I shuffled the cards earlier this evening while we were chatting.
Yep.
And I swear I shuffled them quite well. And I swear this is how they came out. Hawk was first. Straight up. Which is number 2 in the book. The next card up, Eagle, which is number 1 in the book, straight up. The next little slimy reptile is Frog, number 38, upside down. Then there is our lovely dolphin, number 40, upside down. And I double checked, and the last card in for today is Deer, number 4, which is one of my favorite cards. So let me bring it all in. So the first card out is Hawk. First card out is Hawk, and it is Messenger. So obviously the hawk wants to tell us a message with these cards. We'll see what it means. Hawk is akin to Mercury, the messenger of the gods. Hawk medicine teaches you to be observant, to look at your surroundings, observe the obvious in everything that you do. Life is sending you signals. Life is the initiation. If you had pulled the hawk card, then right now a clue about the magic of life is being brought to you. Magic of life. This magic can imbue you with the power to overcome a currently stressful or difficult situation. Now, all of us in this country are going through a difficult situation. So here's trying to give us strength. This is to test your ability to observe the nuances of power lurking nearby. Is the power the talent you have and are not using? Because many people aren't using all of their talents. Are the solution always hard to find because you have lost the broader vision of Hawk? Or is the Great Spirit displaying a gift that you need only to receive? For those folks that know me, I'm always saying accept and receive. So is Hawk bringing you a message or a gift, but are you yet to receive it? What is called for here is an intuitive ability to discern the message carried within the cry of Hawk. The ancients recognized this magnificent bird as a messenger for bringing tidings to their earth walk, the good red road. So Creator sending us messages with Hawk. If Hawk is circled and landed in your cards today, you are to be aware of signals in your life. So pay attention, be observant. So notice and receive them. Hawk may be teaching you to grab an opportunity which may be coming your way. On the other hand, Hawk may be bringing you the message that you should circle over your life and examine it from a higher perspective. From this vantage point, you may be able to discern the hazards which bar you from your freedom of flight. Now, when I pulled the cards, I was like, "You're gotta be kidding!" Two, Hawk and Eagle, and they were separated too. So Hawk is the messenger, and Eagle is the spirit. Eagle medicine is the power of the Great Spirit. So we're getting a messenger, and the eagle is the power of the Great Spirit, the connection to the divine. So our message is, if you're not connected, get connected to the divine. It is the ability to live in the realm of spirit and yet remain connected and balanced within the realm of the earth. Feathers of the eagle are considered to be the most sacred of healing tools. They've been used for centuries for cleaning, for the cleansing and of auras of patients. And within the belief system of Native Americans, eagle represents a state of grace. So the messenger brings it in with eagle, and here's the spirit, a message of grace. If you had pulled this symbol, eagle is reminding you to take heart and gather your courage. So in this day and age, everybody's got a kind of sort of in a slump, but take courage, for the universe is presenting you with an opportunity to soar above the mundane levels of your life. In learning to fiercely attack your personal fear of the unknown, the wings of your soul will be supported by the ever present breezes, which are the breath of the Great Spirit. If you've been walking in the shadow of former realities, Eagle brings illumination. So the messenger is bringing you illumination and bringing you gifts from the Creator. Wisdom comes in many strange and curious forms and is always related to the creative force of the Great Spirit. Eagle teaches you to look higher and to touch grandfather's son with your heart. Interesting, Eagle was in that last story where she went around looking for all the hearts. Remember that? I just read it. So it's interesting. I pulled the Eagle card before I read the story. Interesting. And so Eagle teaches you to look higher, to touch grandfather's son with your heart, to love the shadow as well as the light, to seek beauty in both, and you will take flight like the eagle. The next one is frog. So take heart, my friends, have courage. The message is plain and clear because it showed up and said, "Hi, I'm Hawk and I'm the messenger." 38. It can't be any more straightforward than that. 37, 38. And frog is cleansing. So the good message: seek the spirit and the gifts from the Creator, and frog is cleansing. Frog sings the songs that bring the rain and makes the dirt road more bearable. Frog medicine is akin to water energy and comes up in the east on the medicine wheel. Frog teaches us to honor our tears, for they cleanse the soul. All water rites belong to frog, including all initiations by water. Water prepares and cleanses the body for sacred ceremony. It is the element we understand best in the womb. Frog, like ourselves, is a polywog in the fetal waters and only learns to hop after it experiences the world of fluidity. I love that sentence. But now he was upside down. So the contrary position of frog can denote an unwillingness on your point to wipe the mire out of your life. In other words, folks just want to, they just want to keep crawling in the mud. Mud can turn from mire to bog to quicksand if you don't recognize its effect on your present situation. So if you feel bogged down, don't keep spinning your tires. You better get out that mud and go find you some boards to put under that tire. Is something draining your energy? Are you allowing yourself to ride down the tubes with somebody else? Have you tried to settle somebody else's quarrel and got in the line of fire? Stop doing that. Recognize what it is that's mucking up the lily pond. Swim with frog. Frog's bug eyes see it all. Dive deep and then hop to the next lily pad. So, negativity is drawn to you when you refuse to give yourself the time and space needed to assume a new viewpoint. Oh, this is important. Negativity is drawn to you when you refuse to give yourself the time and space needed to assume a new viewpoint. Frog in the contrary position is an omen that you are courting disaster if you don't stop and smell the lilies, eat some flies, and bask in the sun. So be careful. Creator's trying to give you strength and courage. The message is, and frog is like, don't get stuck in the mud. So the next one up is dolphin, number 40. Again, upside down, but dolphin is manna. Dolphin speaks to us of the breath of life, the only thing that humans cannot go without for more than a few minutes. We can live without water or food for days, but oxygen is the source of our sustenance. Within the breath, we encounter the rhythm of energy that all life emits. In changing the rate or rhythmic texture of our breath, we can tap into any other life form or creature. Think about that. By changing your breath, slower, faster pitch. Dolphin is the keeper of the sacred breath of life and teaches us how to release emotions through dolphin breath. Dolphin creates rhythm, swimming through the water and breathing before submerging, then holding its breath for the duration of the underwater travel. As dolphin comes above the water again, it blows its breath out in a manner resembling the popping of a cork. We can use this same technique to pull the stopper on our tensions and create total relaxation. This is a good exercise to use before entering the silence. So you want to meditate? Well, then you got to pop that cork of stress. Now it's upside down. So if dolphin appears reversed, know that you are forgetting to breathe. They're holding your breath too much. You may be under stress and your body may need manna, meaning that sustenance in the air. You may be starving your cells and organs no matter how many vitamins you may be taking. Your natural cycle may be fouling up. Pay close attention to your health and your feelings. If you are on edge or just plain out tense, take time to relax and breathe the life force into your muscles. Focus on releasing old breath. Remember, you got to, what was it that said you have to take time to have more space to bring new things in? So, the life force. Focus on releasing old breath at the bottom of your lungs and refilling your respiratory system with regenerative manna. In other words, oxygen. And if you think about it when you're doing it. So breathe from the diaphragm and fill the lungs to capacity. Dolphin says to dive deeply into the water, to play with the coral reefs, and to discover the beauty of the rhythm of breath. Not a bad message so far. And deer is number 4, and I think it's innocence. And which is, I can talk about this because I've read it, gentleness, close. So deer was headed up Spirit Mountain to go talk to the Great Spirit, to the Creator. And along the way was the most horrendous, hideous, biggest, giantest, ugliest, nastiest troll monster that could ever be born or imagined. And it scared, that monster kept everybody else off of Sacred Mountain. So along comes deer. Fawn's walking along, and it comes up and says, "Oh, great monster there, I please let me pass. I simply want to go see the Creator, at the top of the mountain, and I would just have a chat and visit." And the monster trying to scare the deer, and the more the deer looked in his eyes, the monster just couldn't be a monster anymore, and ended up with the gentleness of deer melted the heart of this demon, to the size of a walnut. And so then Deer continued on his way up to Spirit Mountain. And that because of Deer, the road to Spirit Mountain is open. Always. So it's like, well, how do I get there? What do I do? Deer has chased away the big evil ogre, and Sacred Mountain's open to all of us when you don't have fear. Deer teaches us to use the power of gentleness to touch the hearts and minds of wounded beings who are trying to keep us from Sacred Mountain. Like the dappling of fawn's coat, both the light and the dark may be loved to create gentleness and safety for those who are seeking peace. If Deer has gently nudged its way into your cards today, you are being asked to find the gentleness of spirit that heals all wounds. Stop pushing so hard to get others to change and love them as they are. Apply gentleness to your present situation and become like the summer breeze, warm and caring. This is your tool for solving present dilemmas you may be facing. If you use it, you will connect with Sacred Mountain, your centering place for serenity, and Great Spirit will guide you. Wowzer. Wowzer, but that is one hell of a set of cards. I mean, right off the bat, the message is Eagle comes in and says, have courage. You know, that Frog says maybe you need to have a little cleansing, don't get stuck in the mud. Dolphin's talking that all of us should breathe. And, you know, and Deer's like, hey, the trail to the great, the Sacred Mountain's open, y'all. Go on up. Wow. Because we're all we are all seeking for peace in some way, whether it's just within our own hearts or our neighbors or friends or folks, you know, around the world. So a good set of cards. Thank you, Creator. that was a good set of cards. I hope that meant something to y'all.
Absolutely. So anyway, good cards tonight. Good information. I hope everybody enjoyed it. It was really good. I tell you what, I learned so much. I love the stories. You know, sure everybody else does too. There's Richard the Red. He says, thank you. Podjo's in the house, off the hook. Scotty Boy. Here you go. And Travis the Architect. There you go. Hey, Travis. Are kangaroos and deer related? Good question. I think so in some probably way. What do you think?
Kangaroos?
Yeah.
And deer?
Yeah.
I don't know. I would want to say that a kangaroo would be more like, it being a marsupial with the pouch and all, that maybe like a weird version of a possum, or a weird version of some rabbits. But a deer, I don't know. They're kind of sort of different.
Good question though. Anyway, I don't know. I'll have to research that. Anyway, great show. You got a show tonight?
Maybe for a bit, yeah.
For a bit. Okay, good deal. Yeah, you put out a couple of shows earlier today. Yeah, so go out and check those out, everybody. The good shows to watch. One about ID, very important to know. Anyway, thank you, Mary Wins. Thank you, everybody. Podjo. Podjo says it's a marsupial. Yeah, we know it's marsupial, but is it related to deer in any way or shape or form? I don't know.
I don't know. That just seems to be in the wrong category for some reason. There are elk and moose and deer and antelope and all goats, but
Yeah, I don't know.
kangaroos, I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't
Well,
know
let me
either.
just put this little tag at the end. The videos I did about your ID. Don't be afraid to show your ID. And we need a voter ID, and like here in the state of Georgia, show your ID if it's time to vote, and don't be afraid of it. And tell your friends that's just nonsense. How do we fix things? We vote. How do we make sure we are Americans? We prove it with our ID.
Right. That's right. I agree. Now remember, everybody, go out and get yourself a shirt, and you too can wear me on your chest.
That's a good way to get ID'd.
Link in the description below. But remember, it comes in. It's about 20. They're about $20. You got to go on Nina's merch channel. She was nice enough to make up some shirts for the Milky Way Soul Tribe. So support the Soul Tribe by getting yourself a shirt today. It's for a limited time only. She's going to have it up for maybe another week and then take it down. But we limited time. Get your shirt today. So that's my big spiel. I want to see everybody out there with Milky Way Soul Tribe shirt. And there's very different varieties. You don't have to get this one. There's one with Brian, and there's one, with both of us on there, and whatever. There's mugs and things like that too. So, yep. Scotty Boy says, see you in about 10 minutes. There you go. Just enough time for you to get a cup of coffee and log on, and you're good to go. All righty. With that, thank you again for being my co-host and partner in this show. And it's been a lot of fun, and we'll do it again next week, same time, won't we?
Thank you, dear friends. We love you, and stay safe. And the cards are telling you, have the courage. The message from the Creator is have courage. And if you're stuck in the mud, have some more courage.
That's exactly right. Well, with that, everybody, go out, have some courage. Don't be afraid to do things. And with that, be nice to your neighbor. Be nice to yourself. It's very important, because when it all boils down to it, it's about being the frequency you want to receive, everybody. Love you all. Peace, everyone.
Cheers.